there, and welcome to Find Your Voice. My name is Joe Crammond, and I'm the host of the show. Today, we have a very special guest, Christine Blance. She is an online specialist dyslexia tutor and advisor. Christine, how are you today?
I'm fine, thank you.
Wonderful. Christine, just for our audience, what we're going to do is ask you some questions about yourself, about your business journey, and who you help and advise and what you offer. And when you're ready, we'll get going with the questions.
Okay, well, I'm ready. So off you go.
Perfect. So if you had a business card, what would it say, just to summarize?
Well, I have a business card, and it says Help for Dyslexia, which is kind of got it in a nutshell, really, because that's what I do.
Fair enough. So tell us a little bit about your business background and how you got started.
Well, it's quite strange, actually, because I never intended to go into teaching at all. I'm a biology graduate originally, and it was very odd because it was in a seminar that I gave in my last year at university, where it was a bird that actually got me into teaching. I was so nervous before my seminar that I didn't actually think that I was going to be able to cope with it. And outside, because it was on the 6th floor, and outside there was a bird, a seagull, hovering on the thermals, and I'd just come back from the Outer Hebrides, where we'd spent 6 weeks walking along the beaches of the Isle of Harris, where there were lots of seabirds, and it was all beautiful. And the sight of this bird actually almost made me go into a trance, and I lost all nerves. And I gave this seminar. I got a standing ovation for it, and the tutor at the end came and said, "I don't understand how you did this, but you certainly did an exemplary seminar. You've got amazing powers of communication. You ought to go into teaching." And that was it, really. I never intended to go into teaching, but that's how it happened. So I got into teaching, and I taught biology for 6 or 7 years in a high school, and then left to have my family. And the next strange thing that happened was a lady that I never knew knocked on my door, a complete stranger, and said, "I understand that you're a biology teacher." And I said, "Well, I was, but I've given up to have my family. Would you like to do evening classes for adults up at the local high school for 2 hours a week in the evenings, teaching O-level human biology to possible trainee nurses or just general adults?" Took it on, and it was about the 6th year that actually somebody came up to me at the end of one of my lessons and said, "Has anybody told you about me?" And I kind of looked him up and down. He was about 20, that kind of age. "No." "What's the problem?" He said, "I'm dyslexic." And in those days, of course, dyslexia wasn't known much about, and I didn't know much about it. I knew it had something to do with reading, but I didn't really know about it particularly. And in order to help him get through the science exam, I sort of clued up on it, and I became so fascinated by it that I decided to specialize, and that's how it happened, really. So if it hadn't been for the bird hovering on its thermals, and if it hadn't been for that stranger knocking on my door, I wouldn't be doing this.
Oh, a wonderful story. That's really interesting stuff. So, it's now great that you're offering value to people that are struggling with dyslexia. So, when it comes to advice, obviously, I'm guessing that's the huge part of it. So, what do people seek you out for as regards to helping them with dyslexia?
Well, it's usually parents because they want their children taught, and I've actually invented a spelling system which is completely unique to me, which I developed in the mid-90s. That was entirely due to a pupil of mine who I was teaching at one of the schools had come up with a sentence. She was having problems with actually spelling words like because, and she'd said to me one day, "Please, could you help me with this word, because I can get the letters, but I can't get them in the right order." And that particular sentence made me think that what she needed was something like a mental glue to stick these letters together in the right order. And I thought, mnemonics. And I hadn't used mnemonics on her before. And I knew there was a mnemonic out there for because, big elephants can't always understand small elephants. And I thought, we'll try that on her. And then I thought, hang on a minute, what about all the hundreds of other words that she can't spell? I couldn't possibly give her one of these for each of these words. It would just be ridiculous. And then this is when I had this light bulb moment of thinking, well, actually, if you actually begin the chant with the word that you're targeting, that makes a complete difference. So this is what I did. I created this complete spelling system whereby I would test pupils with high frequency words, and those that they got wrong, I would give them one of these chants for, and it was incredible the effect that this had on them. Literally, it transformed them. And sort of word got round the area that I'd done this kind of thing, because I got some books out as well, which I was selling. And I got quite a lot of people contacting me to teach their children. And it was quite marvelous, actually, because they would come here to this classroom, and a lot of them would be in a terrible, sort of upset, neurotic state. And then I would introduce them to this technique of mine, which is fun to do, really fun to do. And you sort of see them unfold. And one of my mothers said it looked as though her son was unfurling like a fern, and they just grow in confidence. And it's incredible. And very quickly, they actually improve their reading and spelling ability, and it affects everything. All their lessons start improving, because most lessons are in English, and it's incredible to see the effect upon them.
That's amazing. Yeah, so it's the rhymes and the actual the sound and associating the rhyme with the letters is very, very interesting. It's
well, it is, because it's what happens is that each chant, each word that a child can't spell, they get a chant for, and each chant is a story, and so you tell the story, and then you literally have this chant that you offer them. And then they actually draw a picture. It's entirely multisensory. They draw a picture of this chant. They get involved in the story element of it. They say it out loud. They never write the chant out, but they say it out loud numerous times. And so that resonates in their mind. And then once they can remember the chant, that then means that they can then remember how to spell the word, and it sticks in the memory. And it's incredibly multisensory, which is exactly what these children need.
yeah, it's great. That's wonderful value you offer to people's lives, that, because it sets them up, doesn't it? It gives them the confidence then to be able to
Absolutely.
start writing in front of people and actually filling out forms and homework and all sorts of things.
Yeah.
So very valuable. So who are your target audience, as well as obviously parents? Have you got other people?
It's a huge audience, actually, when you think about it, because it's any parent with a dyslexic child in this country and in America, because I've got some pupils in America as well. It's anybody who's doing homeschooling, and if their child is dyslexic, or not even dyslexic, just struggling with their literacy levels. They don't have to have had a formal diagnosis of being dyslexic. It works for anybody who's struggling. All schools, because schools in this country and in America, because every school will have a certain number of dyslexic pupils. And what worries me slightly, well, not slightly, quite considerably actually, is the number of children that leave the education system semi-literate. And of course, all schools will have their methods of teaching phonics and teaching literacy, but not all children can actually cope with these methods, and many of them fall by the wayside. And this is where my teaching program actually comes into the fore, because this is the kind of program that, if schools had in them this program of mine, this complete teaching program, then anybody can teach it. But it can be taught by a parent, it can be taught by a teacher, it can be taught by an assistant teacher, because all the instructions are in this program. There are 10 instructional videos. It's easy to follow. It's like a recipe. And it would mean that these children who are struggling could then have a chance of being able to be given a method that has proven to be effective over these last numerous decades. And it really does work. I mean, this is not sort of any sales hype or anything. It absolutely, I've seen it time and time again, over and over again. I've taken hundreds of pupils over the years that I've been teaching and turned them round and changed them out from being sort of semi-literate right up to being, well, some of them were bookworms. Some of them have gone on to get first-class honours degrees, and these were children that were given up in schools and never being able to achieve anything. So it's
wonderful. Great.
It's great to see.
That's brilliant. It really is good for to know. Well, obviously you've got, as you say, plenty of success stories. Have you got one in particular that you would like to share with us?
Well, yeah, I've got loads. I mean, literally loads. But I suppose the one that sticks out is a pupil of mine who, she came to me when she was 7, very, very struggling enormously with all aspects of reading and spelling. She hated school. She became almost school phobic. She told me that she often used to feel ill before going into school. And she started with me and absolutely loved these chants, these mnemonic chants. And she accumulated hundreds of them. And it literally turned her into being a struggling, semi-literate child with school phobia, into being a child who was literally a bookworm. She loved books. She couldn't stop reading. Her mother would tell me that she would go past her door at night time and see a chink of light underneath the door at about 11 o'clock at night. And she would say, "Don't you think it's time you're asleep now?" And she would say, "I've got to get to the end of this chapter. I've got to get to the end of this chapter." And I mean, this is wonderful. She would come into my lessons saying, "Look what I'm reading now, Chris." And she would have this great thick tome under her arm. And it was nearly always Harry Potter books, where there was like 800 pages to read. I mean, incredible. She then went on to get a degree in art, and ended up teaching. She's now a teacher, and she's actually using my methods on some of her pupils. And this is not unusual, because there's quite a few occasions where it's become full circle. Struggling child, gone on, succeeded, university degree, whatever, teaching qualifications, teaching children, using these methods of mine with their children. And it's lovely to see that.
That's great. Well, a fantastic transition and turnaround that is.
Yeah, I love it. I love to see it happening. It's really, it's great.
So what would you say is a big challenge that your audience has experienced in the last 3 years? So obviously we all know everything that's been happening. What would you say, how has that affected things? And would you say that's made an impact on how you teach?
Well, it certainly affected me, because once the pandemic came, I couldn't have my pupils coming here to the classroom. And I assumed at that point that my career was over. But in fact, now I'm teaching online. And it means that I don't have to teach local pupils. I can teach anywhere in the UK. And I've got pupils in America. And it works in really well. It's great. Love it. I love having pupils in different parts of the world, because it's quite exciting, not to anything else. But it means that there's a huge scope out there of people that are aware of my existence. And it also means that by teaching online, I am then teaching the parent how to teach like a dyslexic teacher. So they're gaining skills on how to cope with their child. And it means that between lessons, they can actually help them enormously. Whereas when parents used to drop them off here in my classroom, they would then go off to the shops or whatever, or go and have a coffee somewhere. And they wouldn't really have much of a clue of what I was doing with them. So, but now they're actively involved. And it's rather lovely seeing the bond that actually occurs between parent and child when they get away with some of these methods. It's lovely.
So it's actually benefited your business in some respects, that the online world has become...
It's changed. It has changed. Yeah. And I do admit that I miss having pupils directly here with me. But I don't think that I'll ever go back to doing that now. I think I'll stay with online teaching, because it means that I can teach anybody, anywhere, really. And within limits. I mean, obviously the time zone can be a bit of a problem. Australia could be a problem. But, America fits in okay. And anywhere in the UK, obviously. And South Africa, and any English-speaking country, or anybody that's English in any part of the world that's within a reasonable time zone. I've had a pupil in Saudi Arabia, 2 pupils in Saudi Arabia. So, yeah, it works.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's great. Well, then, I mean, just to learn a bit more about you. So what was the last time that you had to leave something behind, and what was it and why?
Had to leave something behind? Goodness me.
Is there anything?
Nothing springs to mind at the moment. No, I can't answer that question particularly, so that one might have to be
That's fine. No, that's fine. All right. Well, looking at your audience then, what keeps them up at night, would you say? So what's worrying people?
Well, parents particularly, because they're much more involved, obviously, with their child than perhaps a teacher is. Although I know I've got a wonderful teacher over in California who is incredibly dedicated to this. And she has put herself out in all kinds of occasions to actually help struggling children using these methods of mine. And she's extremely dedicated. But parents, I think, are very concerned about the future of their children, because many schools are not giving them the kind of help that they need. It takes often ages for them to get diagnosed. And all of this time is time passing by, and almost like wasting time. And parents get completely frantic. And many of my parents in the past have had to become quite militant in order to get help that they need for their children at schools. So yes, very much so. They're worried about their children's future, and what it's going to mean to their career if they're unable to be literate. It's going to affect them in all aspects of their life, which it is. And then the converse happens, that when they're opened up to literacy and they can read and spell and write, it opens up the whole world for them, and it opens up. They reach potentials that perhaps they never thought possible. And so it's vitally important to be able to do the basic skills of literacy. And it does terrify me to think of how many children actually leave school semi-literate. Really,
well, it helps
and many of them end up in prisons as well. I mean, this is incredible to hear how many illiterate people are sitting in prisons. So that's another target audience, really, if prisons would have me.
Well, yeah, I mean that could be interesting for prisoners to.
Well, I've tried in the past to get into a prison, but nobody would have me, because they would say, well, we've got our own methods. That's the usual answer. If you target a school, well, we have our own methods. I know you have. But what about the children for whom this does not work? This works, that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. Well, obviously, with what we're doing, working with you now, we're going to be getting you to speak in front of podcast hosts, potentially within that sector. So you may get some interest from that, Christine. So where do we find more about you? So if people are really interested in learning more about where to get these programs from, to reach out to you.
Well, everything's on my website. So that's helpfordyslexia.co.uk. All of the books are there. The teaching program, which is called Enchanting Strategies, that is there. There are loads of lovely testimonials, video testimonials from people who have used these methods and what it's meant to them. And the website itself's got lots of information about dyslexia anyway in general. So yeah, that's that. Or if you want to look at more videos, I have a YouTube channel. That's usually where people find me, actually, because when I ask them, where did you discover me, they'll nearly always use this same phrase: I stumbled across your videos on YouTube. So I've got to do something about them stumbling, and make that YouTube channel a little bit more.
It's always the buzzwords that people use, isn't there? Like when someone sends a message on LinkedIn, I'm just reaching out to you to see if you're interested in buying my thing.
Yeah.
It's, always those same buzzwords. Well, Christine, it's been an absolute pleasure, and we much appreciate the advice you've just offered, even on this short segment. It'd be wonderful to work with you. And thank you very much for your time. And just for our audience, to make them aware of our journey and what we do, if you want to feature on podcasts as a guest and speak your truth and tell your story, reach us at podcastguesting.pro, and we'll look forward to hearing from you. Christine, it's been wonderful, and thank you very much for your time.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
No problem at all. Goodbye, everyone. Take care.